20% discount for your first 2 years. So if you're interested in that, please let Gary or I know as well. Moving to point number three, thing three, retail sales up, but below expectations. Manufacturing is down.
Yeah. So little weird economic data here. Rob, we've been talking. So last year, we were talking a lot about what looked like a weakening economy, weak manufacturing numbers, but really strong retail numbers. And we were talking about this in the fourth quarter last year. And then that turned, and retail sales have been negative in 3 of the past 4 months. That's been remarkable given the high inflation we've had. Remember, inflation, while it makes things less affordable for all of us, it does mean that when we buy things, the price is higher. And so it looks like higher retail sales. These numbers are not inflation adjusted. And so inflation, strangely as it sounds, helps retail sales. It doesn't make anyone more money in terms of buying power, but it does help
Sure.
sales. So this month, we had a 0.6% sales increase versus last month, which again, we've talked about that annualizing to something over 7%. And that was well above the prior month's drop, but it was also below expectations. People, believe it or not, were expecting, I think, a 0.8% increase. Now, the manufacturing data has shifted. Last month, we got a pretty decent number for the Empire State Manufacturing Survey, where it had made a phenomenal recovery off of this abysmal low. I think it was negative 40 something. I can check the numbers here.
Yeah, you're right.
But last month, the Empire State Manufacturing Survey fell 19 points to negative 21. So it went from -2 to negative 21. Understood, if people aren't following this data, that's really all you need to know. Going from -2 to negative 21 is pretty bad. That's a horrible, horrible slowdown.
Gary, in the takeaway, you mentioned stagflation again, right? We talked about stagflation, I believe it was early last year as well. Any similarities in terms of what we're seeing now versus what we've seen in the past?
Yeah, so stagflation refers to negative economic growth combined with inflation. So our first two things here, we talked about higher CPI, higher PPI, accelerating monthly numbers. Well, inflation is a problem, and it looks like we may be seeing a resurgence of that. The manufacturing numbers are telling you that we have a problem with the economy. Now, do I think we're going to get an official recession this year? No. And we've talked about this before. We talked about this last week. It's an election year. Congress is going to spend like crazy. And this is your weekly reminder that government spending adds to GDP, gross domestic product, regardless of whether it creates value or not. So the example that we always give is the government could go pay 10 million people to dig ditches and pay another 10 million people to fill in those ditches. And congratulations, we've just employed 20 million people, and all of that spending, even though it's created no value, gets added to GDP. So the reason we're talking about stagflation is we definitely have a resurgence of inflation, and the manufacturing numbers have been weak for a while. They've been really bad. And so all of that indicates that we potentially have a problem in the real economy. I don't think we're going to get the official recession only because of government spending. And that is basically the equivalent of taking a bunch of high school kids and telling them to grade their own test papers. My guess is everyone's going to get an A. Congress is trying to give themselves an A here.